Evil does not always wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles politely, asks about your day, and fades quietly into the background. Between 1978 and 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer lived in plain sight. A neighbor, a tenant, a son. But behind his apartment door was a darkness so unimaginable that even seasoned detectives would be scarred for life. His story is not one of mystery, but of horror. And in this tale, the true tragedy lies not in the man who committed these acts, but in the 17 lives he silenced forever. Jeffrey Dahmer, the so-called Milwaukee cannibal, murdered and dismembered 17 young men and boys. His crimes included necrophilia, cannibalism, and the preservation of human remains inside his apartment. The victims, Stephen Hicks, Stephen Twomey, Conorak Synthesumphone, Anthony Hughes, and many others, were vibrant human beings, robbed of futures that will never be known. Dahmer's case is one of the most infamous in criminal history, not only for its brutality, but also for the failures that allowed him to continue unchecked for so long. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His early life was marked by instability. His parents, Lionel and Joyce, fought bitterly, and their divorce left Jeffrey emotionally abandoned. Teachers described him as shy and withdrawn, but underneath the quiet exterior was a fascination that grew darker with age. As a child, Dahmer collected animal bones, fascinated not by life, but by what remained after death. He dissected roadkill, storing carcasses in jars of formaldehyde. Neighbors thought it was odd but harmless. In reality, it was the early rehearsal of horrors to come. By adolescence, Dahmer was drinking heavily. He struggled with feelings of isolation and confusion about his sexuality. These feelings twisted into violent fantasies that required control and submission. The red flags were there, but no one looked closely enough. It is crucial when telling this story, not to let Jeffrey Dahmer eclipse those whose lives he destroyed. Stephen Hicks was 18 years old, hitchhiking to a rock concert in 1978. He was young, full of energy, and never returned home. Conorak Synthesumphone, just 14, was the son of Laotian immigrants. He was playful, gentle, and deeply loved by his family. Anthony Hughes, 31, was a proud, deaf man who worked as a caretaker and dreamed of building a life of his own. Each victim had a story, future, families who still grieve. Their humanity is what Dahmer tried to erase, but it is what we must remember. Jeffrey Dahmer's descent was not sudden. It was gradual, insidious, and ignored. In 1978, just after his high school graduation, Dahmer committed his first murder. He picked up Stephen Hicks, brought him home, and after drinking together, struck him with a dumbbell and strangled him. He dismembered Hicks and scattered the remains near his family home. After that, Dahmer went to college, then the military. Both ended in failure. His drinking spiraled. His urges deepened. And yet society looked away. He was arrested in 1986 for indecent exposure, and again for drugging and molesting a 13-year-old boy in 1988. But even then he was given probation, not prison. The system had multiple chances to stop him. Each time it failed. By the late 1980s, Dahmer was living in Milwaukee, alone, withdrawn, and addicted to alcohol. He moved into the now infamous Oxford Apartments in 1990. There he developed his routine. He would visit gay bars, bathhouses, or the street. He lured men back with promises of money, alcohol, or photography. Once inside, he drugged them, strangled them, and dismembered their bodies. But Dahmer's crimes escalated. He began keeping souvenirs, skulls, organs, photographs. He boiled flesh from bones, bleached skeletons, and eventually began eating parts of his victims. Cannibalism, to Dahmer, was a way to keep them with him forever. It was not just murder. It was obsession, control, and consumption. The cycle repeated 17 times. Each life taken, each body desecrated. But one incident stands out as the most haunting failure of all. In May 1991, Dahmer lured Konorak Synthesumphone, the 14-year-old boy, to his apartment. He drugged him and drilled into his skull, injecting acid in a grotesque attempt to create a zombie who would never leave. Konorak escaped. He was found on the street by concerned neighbors, dazed, bleeding, and barely conscious. They called the police. Officers arrived, but Dahmer convinced them Konorak was his 19-year-old lover, drunk after a fight. The officers handed him back. Hours later, Konorak was dead. 17 lives. And the horror inside apartment 213 continued. On July 22, 1991, Dahmer lured 32-year-old Tracy Edwards to his apartment. But this time things went differently. Edwards noticed the smell. He saw the knives. He resisted when Dahmer tried to handcuff him. In a desperate struggle, Edwards escaped and flagged down 2 police officers. They followed him back to Dahmer's apartment. Inside, they uncovered a nightmare. Polaroids of dismembered bodies. A refrigerator with a human head inside. Freezers containing organs. Acid-filled drums dissolving flesh. The officers had stumbled into one of the most gruesome crime scenes in American history. Detectives documented over 80 crime scene photos. They found 7 skulls, 2 entire skeletons, preserved organs, and hundreds of photographs Dahmer had taken of his victims before and after death. The evidence was undeniable. But what shocked investigators most was Dahmer's calmness. He did not run. He did not resist. He simply said, "For what I did, I should be dead." In interrogation, Dahmer was disturbingly cooperative. For weeks, he gave chillingly detailed confessions. He described how he killed, how he dismembered, how he ate parts of his victims. He spoke with no emotion, as if recounting daily chores. For investigators, it was like staring into the abyss. Dahmer's trial began in January 1992. He pleaded guilty but insane to 15 murders. His lawyers argued his mental illness drove him to kill. The prosecution argued he knew exactly what he was doing. The jury sided with the prosecution. Dahmer was found sane, guilty, and sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences, 957 years in prison. In court, the families of his victims confronted him. They cried, they shouted, they demanded answers. But Dahmer sat expressionless, offering no comfort, no apology that could ever undo the pain. On November 28, 1994, Jeffrey Dahmer was attacked and killed by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver in prison. Scarver later said it was justice. But for the families of the victims, there was no justice. Their sons, brothers, and loved ones were gone. No sentence, no death could bring them back. The case left scars on the city of Milwaukee, on the police who investigated, and on society itself. It exposed systemic failures, missed red flags, and prejudice that allowed Dahmer to continue. Jeffrey Dahmer's story is not just about one man's evil. It is about how evil hides in plain sight. How warning signs are ignored, how cries for help go unanswered, and how vulnerable lives are lost when the world looks away. In the end, it isn't Dahmer we should remember. It is Stephen, Konorak, Anthony, and the 14 others whose futures were stolen, because their lives mattered, and their stories deserve to be told. If this documentary moved you, please honor the victims by keeping their memory alive. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Together, we can shine light on the darkness and ensure that the lives of the victims are never forgotten.